The purpose of the Notice of Intended Prosecution is to serve notice to you that you will be prosecuted for an offence. For most cases, you won't actually be taken to court, as you can simply choose to accept the charge and be issued with a fixed penalty notice, or FPN. The FPN will likely include both a fine and points on your driving licence. However, it's worth noting that you cannot be issued with an FPN unless the registered vehicle owner first received an NIP. Beware though, if you were in a borrowed or a hired car, then it won't be you who receives the NIP in the post. Parts of this process have time limits, which, if exceeded, become a convenient loophole for not having to pay. If you're pulled over by a police officer, then they can give you an NIP verbally. But if you're caught by a camera, then the NIP will be posted out to whoever is the registered owner of the vehicle. These postal NIPs must arrive within 14 days from the date of the alleged speeding offence. It has been known for the police to send out a notice of intended prosecution late. Things like bank holidays or a postal strike could delay the NIP. If your NIP wasn't sent within 14 days of the offence, the police can no longer prosecute. This means you cannot be served with a fixed penalty notice, and therefore don't have to pay or accept any penalty points on your licence. The police won't necessarily know that it arrived late, so be sure to send it back as out of time. Otherwise, you risk being summoned to a magistrate's court for failing to comply. Beware though, as mentioned, if you are in a borrowed or a hired vehicle, then it won't be you who receives the NIP, and you won't necessarily know exactly when it arrived. However, if the NIP was served within 14 days, then there is a second time limit that the police need to adhere to. They only have 6 months to issue you with the actual fine, the fixed penalty notice. So if there's a delay in sending you your fixed penalty notice, then you might not have to pay. However, as we're dealing with a much more significant time frame, this one is less likely to occur. But if your fixed penalty notice does arrive late, then just like with a late NIP, you need to let the police know why it is you won't be paying. If you received an NIP through the post, then included will be a Section 172 notice to fill out and return. The vehicle owner uses this to inform the police who was driving at the time. Useful if you share a car, for instance. The vehicle owner is legally obliged to return the 172 form within 28 days, or it's considered a criminal offence, as is lying about who was driving. Many parents have tried to take the fine and points on behalf of their children to avoid the younger driver's insurance shooting up. In a similar way, couples have often tried to take each other's points when one is getting near to a driving ban. However, people have really come a cropper doing this. If the camera did snap a photo of your face, then the correct driver could be quite easily identified. If you ignore an NIP and don't return to Section 172, you'll be summoned to a magistrate's court for failing to comply, as well as for the original speeding offence. The court could then fine you up to £1,000, add up to 6 penalty points to your licence, or even disqualify you from driving altogether. So in short, never ignore an NIP. If you don't accept the fine or the penalty points, you can challenge a speeding ticket in court. However, it can be difficult to win these cases because you only need to be proven to have exceeded the speed limit briefly. And don't think the old movie cliche, "my wife was in labour," don't think that kind of line is going to cut it. As a regular citizen in a regular vehicle, speeding is always going to be considered an offence. The only likely way you can win a speeding ticket challenge is if you weren't the driver, if your car had been maybe stolen, or if the vehicle was mistakenly identified as speeding. In these circumstances, you might find that a speed camera photo showing that you weren't the driver, or that someone else was using your registration on another car, you might find a speed camera photo is a very helpful thing indeed. In some circumstances, you may be able to argue that there was no legal notice of the speed limit on the road. However, recent campaigns like Streetlights Mean 30 are making these excuses harder to use. And be warned, an unsuccessful speeding fine challenge is likely to result in a bigger fine. If you want to challenge a ticket, or you're worried that a fine is about to land you in trouble, then a popular option is to consult a solicitor for help. There's many online solicitors that work out cheaper and easier than meeting in person. Just Answer, for example, only costs £5 for a trial. One of my colleagues saved over £270 on a parking ticket by using their service. I've linked that offer down in the description, and if you use that, you'll also be supporting MoneyNerd, so thank you.